Number 10. Sue Storm and Dr. Doom. We're gonna start off with one you may be more familiar with, and that's Doom using his God Emperor powers to create a patchwork world of the colliding multiverse. This world was called Battle World, and in this world he met a version of Sue who fell in love with him and started a family with him. They had 2 children who they named Franklin and Valeria. So basically he was like, F you Reed, I've got your life. How's it feel? And Reed was like, feels bad, man. I'm gonna grow a beard. Now this hasn't been the only time Doom and Sue have been together. On Earth 99315, these two were married, and Doom was a hero, and Sue was Baroness Von Doom. Though some fans speculate this Doom was actually Reed. There was an upswing in people considering these two after Doom was able to be the method by which Sue Storm's miscarriage was retconned into the birth of a healthy little girl, who Doom then named. That's why their daughter is named Valeria, and Doom is her godfather. Fun fact. She even left them to live with him for a while. Number 9. She-Hulk and Juggernaut. This happened during Chuck Austin's run on the Uncanny X-Men, a run that is disliked by many fans, and in it we had one of those reformed Juggernaut sightings. So Jen becomes attracted to him, and the two hooked up, and destroyed a hotel room because they're both big and muscular and it's funny. This also happened when she was his defense lawyer. Ethics, what are those? Other writers would not be down for this and relegate it to an alternate universe Jen, because main verse Jen would never. I don't know if we can say that. I mean, Star Fox? Is Star Fox worse or better than Juggernaut? I don't know. What's the metric? Dan Slott would be the one to be like, it's okay guys, false alarm, nothing to see here. But there would still be a gross line of Wolverine telling Jen after she hit on him that he doesn't want Juggernaut's sloppy seconds. Ew. Also, but you'll take Sabertooths? Where's the line, Logan? I mean, James. Number 8. Power Girl and The Sod. That's right, you heard it here first, or probably later. This happened in the world's finest comic that was between the Huntress and Power Girl. So this occurred in the New 52 and had to do with Earth 2 shenanigans. So how did this happen? Well, again, this was kind of clandestine. She didn't know she was hooking up with The Sod at first, and there's a great cover with a cell phone, and I'm putting it up, you can see it. So he was posing as Mr. Terrific, who had been exiled to Earth 2, and used that as a chance to make his move, and actually succeeded in getting Power Girl to be his girlfriend. So he must have something going on in the personality department. I'm just kidding. She was already drawn to Mr. Terrific. He wrote it in that pre-existing goodwill and relationship. And well, this was short-lived, and Power Girl was furious when she found out. He was just trying to find his way back to Apocalypse. This is if people going and coming from Apocalypse doesn't spell doom for us all. Number 7. Possessed Raven and Starfire. So this occurred during the New Teen Titans run in the 80s, and during this arc, Nightwing and Starfire were getting married. It was huge, we've been building up to it. Well, it didn't happen because Raven crashed their wedding hard, and a Raven who was full on in all hail Trigon, I can't wait to rule the universe mode. But here's the thing, it's what happened when she crashed it that was, well, it was a lot. There was some very suggestive things going on, some BDSM things, like with her forcing Starfire onto all fours and yoinking her hair back. Then she kisses her and is all, dear sweet Coriander, of all those I've taken, so far you have pleased me the most. This while straddling her. How did this get past the code? I have so many questions. Is there a non-R-rated way to read this? Because if so, I'll accept my new home in the gutter. No judgment. What do you all think? It's a lot of a lot, right? Number 6. Catwoman and Nightwing. So this one is, well, it just happened. I mean, I'm perplexed by this. Does Catwoman fall more into an anti-hero vein? Sure, most of the time, but making out with your main squeeze's son is pretty icky. There were some hints it was to make Batman jealous too. Who are you, Talia? Well, Bruce has a type, I'll give him that. Nightwing was as perplexed as I was, but he went with it, because that was his characterization at the time. Fun fact, not really actually, but writer Devin Grayson, who would write the arc in which he was raped, would initially blame him for it, only to apologize years later and say she hadn't thought the plot was a big deal. I'm not over it. Anyway, Catwoman and Dick, they made out. Next number. Number 5. Blink and Annihilus. Blink is an interesting character who I have a huge soft spot for because of the Exiles, but she's here because she had a romance with Annihilus, who is a classic Fantastic Four villain. Blink initially comes from the age of Apocalypse, and took up with the amnesiac version of Annihilus. This was in the negative zone, but he called it off when he felt himself beginning to revert back to his original personality, as he really did care for her and didn't want to hurt her. This would be a relationship that would stay with Blink, and when she had the opportunity to attempt to save him, she would take it. However, these days, this is more of a forgotten romance, and for most of us more of a someone was with Annihilus? What? When? Why? Number 4. Ravager and Superboy. This one is a pure fake out. Now, Ravager was a supervillain when she first debuted, unstable, working with her father Deathstroke, but over time she joined the Titans. Deathstroke's kids in the Titans, it's a thing. Well, except for his first kid, you know, getting enhanced by the Hive and dying, which started off Deathstroke's whole I gotta kill the Titans thing. Now, Ravager is more frequently portrayed as a member of the Titans, or coming around to them very quickly. Now, this pairing, her and Superboy, is teased on the very cover of the issue. And just look at Superboy's face, it looks like like this is the worst thing that's ever happened to him. But haha, this Ravager was a fake. This wasn't the real Ravager, which I'm fine with. Ravager and Superboy, well, Connor, Superboy, there is more than one now. It's all more confusing than it needed to be thanks to them hyper-aging John Kent, Clark and Lois' son. Take that, Lady of Kleenex mentality. Still, this was a thing. They kissed. It counts. Ha! Number 3. Storm and Dracula. Dracula was super into Storm, wanted her to be his queen vampire. Vampire queen. Why do people in comics always turn this offer down? I'd be all, pick me, I volunteer. Which is why I never get picked. Too keen. You gotta act like you don't want it. Like a cat. Uncanny X-Men number 159. He went full Dracula on her. Seduction. He does turn her into a vampire for a bit, and we get this great annual cover of her living her best vampire life. But well, this didn't last. She managed to shake the vampirism off, and I for one was sad. But we have the whole alternate timeline and what if where she stayed a vampire. This was, I'm biased. I love me an evil powerful queen, and that is Storm to a T when she gets like this. I just love Storm. I'll take any Storm I can get, even 80s punk rock Mohawk Storm, aka the coolest Storm. Dracula used to be cool, now he's kinda whiny and begs for dates. But he married Deadpool's ex-wife, so maybe he's happy now. I don't know, probably not. Eternity is a long time. Number 2. Thor and the Enchantress. This gets to be high up because this could have been a great love. In an AU story, these two were married and had a son. Happily married, no Sue and Reed shenanigans here. Enchantress at this point wishes she was the woman Thor loved. Amora, not enough people say her name. Amora is her name, not the woman that Thor loves. That changes. Right now it's the She-Hulk? Now this developed over time. She was initially sent to take out Jane and worked with Loki to seduce Donald Blake, Thor's human form. But she came to care for him, but well, that's not the best first impression, is it? And Thor has a whole slew of lovely ladies throwing themselves at him, so she has a lot of competition, and Thor's not really one to dabble too much in dealing with the villains. He's not Batman, that's for sure. These two, there's something there. I just want more of a spotlight on Amora.
I wanted thy love, not your death. Please, please come back to me.
And number 1, Dr. Doom and Storm. Oh yes, Dr. Doom is at it again. He's trying to find that Baroness Von Doom. Will no one help him warm his drafty castle and listen to him lament about the death of his mom? Someone stay with Doom. Uncanny X-Men number 145. This issue sees the two of them having a candlelit dinner together, and even though it's part of a Doom plot, he finds himself drawn to her, particularly her confidence and lack of fear around him. The way she acts as though they're just equals, and he's super into it. And she seems to like him. She's like, Doom is a fascinating man. And he's like, she's drawn to me like a lioness to a lion, like a queen to a king. Wow, calm it down. Down, boy. He ultimately goes through with his plan with Arcade, but not before saying he finds her enchanting, but then ruining it by adding child to that. Just why, Doom? Go back to like a lioness to a lion. Number 10, Nightwing and Harley Quinn. So this one is low cause, well, you probably heard about this one thanks to a little movie called Batman and Harley Quinn. In this, Harley and Nightwing hook up, there's no other way to put it. This is after she beats him in a fight and ties him to a bed and then turns around and notices that things are standing to attention and decides, well, let me just have my way with him. You know if the scene had been reversed, we would not be talking about this the same way, which is why I defy the double standard. This was creepy for me, uncomfortable, he couldn't say no. I hear you, oh, he was into it. Again, reverse it. Would you be saying the same thing? If yes, congratulations, you're not a hypocrite. I'm so aggressive today. I blame Harley, I'm channeling that Harley energy.
Hey, wait, is it true you used to be Robin? Huh, ain't that a kick in the pants? Little boy wonder all grown up.
Harley isn't exactly the most stable, but this isn't the only time we've seen these two hook up. This also happened briefly in Grayson, where she actually identified him by his kiss. Grayson was an interesting series, so much cheesecake pretending that that level of overt thirst happened in other comics. Man was molested and attacked by vampires. I've read all of Grayson. I was the target audience, I think, and they got me. It's fine, it happens. Number 9, Superman and Poison Ivy. So this is pure coercion, no romance. No romance, or is this a consensual hookup shenanigans here? This occurred during Hush, and Poison Ivy used her pheromones and, well, pheromone kiss to control him. I'm telling you, Superman is susceptible to these things. Now some say he's not more susceptible than others, why are you harping on it? However, when someone is nearly invulnerable, all weaknesses stand out all the more. So here Ivy controlled Superman at the behest of Hush, and for the overall plot. Now some people just remember this cause, well, it's an iconic look. That's a good reveal when she wraps herself around him and is all like, oh, the gasp, I can't believe this is happening. The art in Hush match was just really good, regardless of how you feel about everything else. Number 8. Nightwing and Mirage. Nightwing over time has developed a reputation for being a hunk in the DC universe. All the people adore him. Him, Dick, not Rick. So during the New Teen Titans run from the 80s, the villain Mirage took a liking to him, but knew she didn't have a shot. Not only does Dick not have a savior complex villain fetish like Batman, but he was dating, nay going to marry Starfire at the time. So what did she do? She tricked him into being with her by turning into Starfire. He had no idea, and then when he found out that he'd been assaulted, the rest of the team called him a slut. Teen Titans go! Mirage was there at first to kill Donna Troy, to stop her son in the future. She was supposed to seduce Dick as part of the mission, but she really enjoyed it. She gave him a mullet and that Deathwing costume. Oh, Deathwing, what a time. Number 7. Iron Man and Madame Mask. Now, comics love to give heroes a villain to tempt them if they can, to increase the drama. In Tony Stark's case for a while, that was Madame Mask. It wasn't uncommon in early Iron Man for the ladies Tony loved to either be secret or blatant villains. So Madame Mask, Whitney Frost, yes she has another name but I don't feel like butchering it. These two would come to know both of each other's identities and start a romantic relationship. Madame Mask was moved by the concern Tony showed over her face. She's down for people who don't care about her scars. It is sweet, but this would all break down when she had to choose between him and her father. And she found that she just couldn't. She and Tony still have a complex relationship, but it's not as romantic of one. Number 6. Jason Todd and Talia al Ghul. Let's squick you out. Now at the time this happened, Jason was not a superhero, but he would be if you count Red Hood like that. And he was Robin before, so haha, take that, it counts. So initially, after Jason was resurrected officially, after the fake out Hush resurrection that would then turn out to be real, complicated yes, Jason would have a backstory of being taken from the streets by Raish, who was training him to use against Batman, but he was a bit more of a brain-dead husk than who he used to be. Then Talia took pity on him and put him in the Lazarus pit. She was treating him as a mother figure would. She took him under her wing and trained him, but she would then tell him about Tim Drake, the third Robin, to get him all riled up, and also tell him how Batman had at that time taken out her father, and that she needed him to punish him for her. Then she had sex with him. Yeah, that's pretty squicky. You're like a son to me. Punish your father for me. Nope. I'm out. Number 5. Nightwing and Sean. So after Rebirth, Nightwing was relaunched, and there were some attempts to give him a new love interest, not Starfire, not Babs, who were doing different things at the time. Someone new. Enter Sean, who was a real minor villain. The comic even at times calls her an activist. So she would graffiti things, and she was called the Defacer. Is it the Silver Age? Because they want their character names back. In Rebirth, he was supposed to have met her while he was still working with Batman, but despite being essentially a tag artist, she was a match for Dick in every way because of her father. Her big plot with Dick was that she was maybe pregnant. Pregnancy scare. Dun dun dun. This relationship did not end up lasting. Number 4. Scarlet Witch and Doctor Doom. This comes to us from Avengers: The Children's Crusade, a miniseries where we see the young Avengers seeking out Wanda because Wiccan, her son, through complicated retcon, has begun to experience his own reality-altering powers. So he wanted to make sure he didn't, unmake the universe. So when he finds out she's at Doom's castle, he goes to rescue her, only to find her in Doom's colors, which in comics is an instant romance cue. You change your color scheme, you might as well go buy a house together. In fact, when Wiccan asks if she's okay, she says, yup, she's marrying Doom tomorrow. So she's great. Baroness Von Doom, here we come. But it turns out that this wasn't a genuine courtship, which is a shame since the two do have a lot in common. Instead, it was Doom who was manipulating her to be with him in a bid to keep her sane, and keep her away from the memories of her past self, the whole no more mutants thing, also House of M. This was to make sure she wouldn't wipe out a whole species again or almost wipe them out. But Wanda remembers, and actually after a bit of finagling goes back to Doom, but not romantically, but for help, because he's such a master sorcerer and all, but there seem to be some lingering feelings there. But the ritual they have to do turns Doom back into Hot Doom, which we can never have, that's not the status quo anymore. So he poofs out, so broken up, I guess? I would have been down for more of this though. Number 3. Supergirl and Lex Luthor. Now Supergirl has had some intriguing romances, with Brainiac 5, with her horse, Comet. That was when he was posing as a man. But the Lex plot was a bit disturbing. At first it appeared she was with his son, Alexander Luthor Jr., which would have been okay. But then it turned out that Lex was inside his son's body, posing as his own son. But this Supergirl was slightly different, she was known as Matrix, there was other Earth stuff involved, it was pretty convoluted. However, Luthor wasn't even with her because he wanted to be with her, it's because he wanted to develop clones of her, which is pretty standard Lex fare, just look at Connor. Clones everywhere. But that's a relationship ender, so she dumped him back in 1994. Number 2. Wolverine and Mystique Mystique. So remember when Wolverine was all no sloppy seconds? Well, he doesn't mean it, because he ended up hooking up with Mystique, even though I guess technically he was the first. It doesn't matter, it's still a gross line. The two actually met back in 1921, and she used him in a bank robbery, but these two would always drift together because of, well, their connection and the fact that they've both been around for longer than other people, and will be around for longer than other people after too. They've also moved in the same circles, kind of on opposite sides. They just kind of fall into each other, sometimes, but it rarely lasts. Too much bad blood and history between them. Mystique has her beliefs, and Logan has his angst and his pain, and the twain very rarely meet. But this is one that some fans would like to see more of. Would you? Let me know down below. And number 1, Batman and Nocturna. Let's be real, I have a hard time seeing Batman turn down many of his rogues if they propositioned him. If you wrote it right, you could probably get away with it. He really wants to see them get better, to see the light. So at one point in his history, he had a relationship with Nocturna. This is pre-Crisis Nocturna. This plot, oh man. So Nocturna became one of those people who was entangled with both Bruce Wayne and Batman, but she also got into a custody battle with him for Jason. She was a surrogate mother to him and even adopted him. And you know what she didn't do? Sleep with him. Looking at you, Talia. But she didn't want to take Jason away from Bruce, so she proposed the next best solution in her eyes, an actual proposal. The two would get married and be Jason's parents together. Poor Jason, just being used as a pawn. She was actually in love with Bruce, and they did get married, but obviously it did not last. Number 10. So get ready, this one has to be low because I'm stretching hard for them to qualify. It's a mighty reach. Renee Montoya and Two-Face. Renee Montoya would become the Question, and Two-Face was Harvey Dent. Boom, acceptable. Anyways, yeah, these two had a bit of an odd, kinda sorta one-sided courtship, mostly one-sided. This happened leading up to Gotham Central and was not romantic. This one's not cute. No hazelnut lips here. So during No Man's Land, the Batman arc where a giant earthquake devastated Gotham and villains took full advantage and Batman refused help from people who came offering it, like Superman cause, well, he's Batman, Renee Montoya became a go-between for the police force who remained and Two-Face, who is the leader of one of the sections of Gotham. She would try to connect with the Harvey Dent side of him, and it worked, only a little too well. Seeing how tirelessly she worked and how understanding she could be, he fell in love with her. His Dent persona would take over for part of this arc too, putting him temporarily in the good column, and at that point they had a good relationship. However, this would all end badly when he discovered she was a lesbian and proceeded to out her to her friends, family, and colleagues, hoping they would all reject her and she would have no choice but to be with him, the only person who truly loved her. Dark stuff. She obviously gave that a hard pass. Number 9. Batman and Batgirl, The Killing Joke, but also secretly some other places. The adaptation of The Killing Joke is now infamous for how poorly received the extended story featuring Barbara Gordon was well received. It was intended to give her more agency and character before her paralysis. It instead, for many fans, reduced her to a whining love interest who was more of a caricature, but some people loved it. Mileage varies. The character development would involve her struggling with balance of violence and being Batgirl, but also her proving she wasn't just a little girl by sleeping with Batman, just mounting him after they fight on a rooftop.
You wanted! I made it work! Ugh.
This activated for many people the "he's friends with her dad" alarm bells. But this is a result of a particular creator, Bruce Timm. Since Timm's days on the animated series, he has been hinting that Batgirl had a crush on Batman and that they had a thing. They would actually have a brief thing later in that DCAU continuity, and in Batman Beyond's timeline, which continues that continuity, Bruce Wayne would get her pregnant and she would miscarry in a fight, and that would lead to the rift between Bruce and Dick. This relationship, some people like it, many people don't, and even those that do feel it could be handled better than it has been at points. Rooftop sex. Raise the roof. Number 8. Daredevil and Typhoid Mary. So Daredevil accidentally created Typhoid Mary, which adds a whole other layer to these proceedings. So let's go. Mary worked at a brothel, and Daredevil had tracked his villain there. However, when he broke in to confront him, instead of the girls who worked there being happy to see him, they attacked him. And in the skirmish, he ended up accidentally pushing Mary out of a window. At that point, because you know in comics a head injury means personality shift or amnesia, she vowed to never let another man hurt her again and became Typhoid Mary. It also triggered her mental illnesses, such as split personalities. So she would begin a romance with Matt Murdock while fighting him as Typhoid Mary, as the Daredevil that is. This was the Daredevil villain hookup pre-Elektra, but then Elektra came and erased all knowledge of anything prior. Was there life before Elektra? Yes, there was. Is my timeline correct? I'm sure you'll let me know. Number 7. Cheetah and Batman. So this one comes to us from the Justice League series, which is part of the DCAU, and here we're dealing with the Injustice Society, when they just so happen to capture Batman because, well, the Joker was part of the society, and if the society's not taking down Batman, he's not interested. So they have Batman all chained up in a force field, and different villains are keeping an eye on him. And at one point it's Cheetah, full furry Cheetah, who decides to mac on Batman because, well, a lot of people have the hots for Batman, and when tied up they will take full advantage of this. This was more curiosity than a thing. Batman always lets them kiss him too. It puts them in a vulnerable spot. Joker should just try this, it clearly works. Number 6. Night Owl and the Twilight Lady. We're leaving DC and Marvel kinda. Say it ain't so. We're gonna look at the Watchmen universe, and we're gonna be looking at Night Owl 2, Dan Dreiberg, a fascinating case, a man who loved being a superhero as it made him interesting, as well Dan, he's kinda ordinary, bordering on boring, which is fine, but it's an interesting contrast. Well, one of the dalliances from his heyday is with the villain the Twilight Lady. This is hinted at subtly in the first Watchmen graphic novel series by Alan Moore, where there is some dialogue and also a framed picture of her. There's also that one shot before the world explodes in his dream sequence, and then it was brought to the foreground in the Before Watchmen series, which Moore hated, but that doesn't mean you have to. Their relationship was explored more in depth, with the two hooking up only to have a funny moment when she realizes she actually already knows his civilian identity. And while it's all quite friendly, it's nostalgic, which for me worked because it was set before the big superhero ban in that universe, etc. Number 5. Killer Frost and Firestorm. Now, thanks to the Flash's CW series, many of you may be more aware of this one. This is than you would have been otherwise, but this one is a classic. People can't get enough of the fire and the ice. The first incarnation of the character did appear in Firestorm comics. This was Crystal Frost, who would eventually die after absorbing too much energy from Firestorm, which would lead us to Louise Lincoln, but she would have vendetta against Firestorm, blaming him for Crystal's death. It was with Crystal who he started the flirtation. Killer Frost used to be a big flirt. That would come back a bit with Caitlin Snow in the New 52. People like the opposites, the fact that their very touches cause steam. Look, these are the rationales, I just report them, I don't judge them. That's not what the series is for. This series is for joy. It sparks joy. Number 4. Superboy and Poison Ivy. 90s Superboy back at it again. This is from the World's Finest 3 miniseries, when Connor is all, Poison Ivy, I can handle this, only to be floored when she kisses him. Now, people always say these don't count. Ivy kisses everyone. She does, yes, but at times there can be some canon lingering effects of besottedness. There was a manipulation element in there at play. Speaking of, in the Batman animated series comic tie-ins, she would kiss Robin and cause him to fall for her so that he could protect them while they went out on their crime sprees, them being her and Harley. These are more like blips, hookups. Kinda. But sometimes she takes them further when the whim strikes her. Poison Ivy is dangerous and misanthropic, meaning she hates people. Lovey-dovey Ivy just, okay, real talk, it can work, but most of the time writers just do it to make her a foil for Harley, which reduces her down to just a love interest, the very thing they accused Harley of being for the Joker, even though that was never true. Just, can we write Ivy with conflict and personality, please? Remember when she saved all those orphans? Remember when she tried to blow up the world? I do. Anyway, her and Superboy making out. He doesn't mind it too much, because that was his character trait. Ladies, rawr. Number 3. Batwoman and Nocturna. So the Batwoman comic series would introduce a deep love between Batwoman and her partner Maggie Sawyer. It was all gonna culminate in a wedding. It was the writer's whole plan, a big arc, but then it didn't happen because no marriages, like at all. It was a decree. It was a thing at the time. Marriage? Boo. Who would read that? My salt knows no bounds. Give me couples of all types, including married. So we would instead at one point have a vampire plot with Batwoman and Nocturna. This was not romantic. Nocturna would use her vampiric power to hypnotize her and make her kinda think she was with Maggie. She was really out of it. She would then drink from her and other things were heavily implied. In fact, it would go on to be called a rape. I mean, many vampire encounters, when you think about it, kinda end up that way. This would become kinda a relationship, but an unhealthy one. Some were mad it ever happened, and were like, vampirism doesn't make it okay. But others were like, it's dark and not supposed to be something you love, and if you do, it may not be for the reasons people think. It spawned a whole bunch of we need to talk about this articles, which I love, and here we are, talking about it. It was dark and it happened. Vampires. Blah blah blah. Number 2. Daredevil and Black Cat. This is mostly on here because, well, there are some really awkward panels like this kissing panel followed by him sniffing his fingers. I've been too deep in the gutter to not have a very specific thought process when seeing this panel. May you live on in innocence if you don't know what I'm talking about. Bless your soul. So when Black Cat ended up teaming up with SpiderMan and Daredevil, she found herself drawn to Daredevil. And you know how Felicia is, she's a go for it kind of girl. And actually so is Murdoch. He's not adverse to hooking up with the more dangerous ladies. And fans fans? Well, they liked it. They were like, is this gonna be the new thing? Black Cat skirts the lines of anti-hero and full villain. She falls back and forth as the plot needs her to. My favorite part of Spider-Man seeing these two making out is him saying, I think this is my supervillain origin story. Still, with Black Cat, you always have to deal with the fact that she's more into the mask part of the person than their civilian identity. So when she's with people seeking a balance, it can be a bit of a problem for her. Still, cool pairing, out of left field, but still, made sense. And in at number 1, Iceman and Mystique. That's right, this was a big deal for some people. So Bobby got into his head that Mystique could be redeemed, and hence we would have a bunch of issues of him working with her, trying to save her, and her, well, she seemed to think he was sweet, and he actually tried to understand her. Like her past relationship with Rogue and the like. This turned into a bit of a relationship for a bit, with lines like, you're so cold to the touch, but that doesn't make any difference to the fire that burns here being his heart. Now, some people had beef with the age gap. Mystique is old, like she knew Wolverine back in the day, and so some were like, no, he's a kid. Others worried she was manipulating him, and how earnest he clearly was about her turning over a new leaf. Ultimately, this would all fall apart because she would go back to villainy and this relationship would become a sore spot, as now one we're not always allowed to talk about in certain circles. You know, cause time travel, young Jean Grey, and poorly handled retcons with rationales like, he's different because that was his young self and not his old self. Iceman's history freaks some people out now, but not me. All Iceman all the time. Who else remembers this pairing? Number 10, Catman and the Huntress. So Catman was given an upswing in cred when he was added to Gail Simone's Secret 6 series in 2005. He went from being a joke ripoff of Catwoman, even though he was dressed like Batman, to a character with actual pathos and motivations and backstory, and a penchant for walking the anti-hero route. This eventually would lead him into contact with the Huntress. This is the pre-New 52, post-Crisis Huntress, so Helena Bertinelli. She was Catwoman and Batwoman's daughter for a bit before Crisis on Infinite Earths. So from the start, these two are attracted to each other, expressed quite strongly in Birds of Prey number 104, where the two have to dance together and can do nothing but have anti-hero-hero banter. Ultimately, this was a two ships passing in the night type of deal. They met, they flirted, they made out. They flirt when they see each other, or did pre-rebirth, but it was not meant to be. Still, it was fun, but again, it was pushing Catman into Batman territory. Na 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 Catman. They're low because it was no great love to span the ages, but it happened and the world must know. Number 9, Speedball and Squirrel Girl. Pre the digital era, one of Squirrel Girl's big traits was that she was an assertive flirt. If she liked you, she made no bones about it. She was quite forward with how she came onto Matt Murdock, and her taste varied. Squirrel Girl had a crush on Speedball, and it turned out he did too. It was all super cute. He kissed her, said he liked hazelnuts. Squirrel Girl's lips taste like hazelnuts. Fun fact. It was all just adorable. She built it up a lot, but these two were not meant to be because Speedball became Penance. This is because he was part of the event which launched Civil War, the first one. He was on the team The New Warriors, who were trying to take down Nitro when he detonated and killed 612 people, including 60 kids. This, well, it changed Speedball, and he found he could only access his powers through pain. He made a suit that contained 612 spikes, 60 longer ones to represent the kids, and he wears it, or wore it, while he fought crime. Even though now he can access his powers again without doing this, he still feels guilt and feels that he should feel pain. This was all too edgy and dark for Squirrel Girl, who was horrified in the changes in him. So horrified she went back in time to try to prevent him from becoming Penance. I must now point out that at this point they weren't properly dating. That's intense. Boundaries. I'm scared. He would ultimately become Speedball again, without time travel. And these two, well, it wasn't meant to be. Number 8, Lex Luthor and Amanda Waller. Back to brief why moments. So this comes to us from Superman/Batman, the series from 2003, and the first big story arc, Public Enemies. Just everything. This is from the time Lex is president, and of course he's evil, and of course he's trying to kill Clark. And in the process he ends up getting himself all jacked up, and making out with a very surprised, perplexed Amanda Waller. Waller and Lex working together isn't too hard to buy, though working adjacent to each other would probably be a better way to put it. But these two are way too dedicated to their respective clandestine tasks for this to be a thing. They would just have massive files on each other. Does Lex hook up with people? Does Waller? Now I've fallen down a rabbit hole. But what else is new?
Intend for you to play a role in all this. A very important role.
Mr. President, Hawkman.
Number 7, Harley Quinn and RedTool. So some would classify this more as an anti-hero couple, but killing for money? I don't know. But leave that aside for a moment, because this relationship, or flirtation rather, is quite interesting. In comic fandom, one of the biggest Harley Quinn ships is the crossover pairing between her and Deadpool. which is only ramped up as DC has made her more and more Deadpool-esque. So in her New 52 series and beyond, a character named RedTool was introduced, an extremely blatant Deadpool stand-in. He was completely in love with her in an insane, I'ma kidnap you so we can go to the carnival kind of way. She treats him pretty horribly for the most part. Except when she needs him though. Over time, the two come to develop a friendship, though he's essentially the Harley to her anti-hero Joker. He's just Deadpool. It works for some people, but for others they fall into characterception. So RedTool is Deadpool, who was at first modeled off of Deathstroke because he was Wade Wilson instead of Slade Wilson. Comicception. RedTool isn't replacing Joker or Ivy or even Deadshot for most fans anytime soon. Number 6. Namor and Emma Frost. Man, was this one unhealthy. And an affair. But they're tenuous anti-heroes at best, though Emma ranges a bit more, and villains at their worst. Namor and Emma Frost. This happened when they were working together and was particularly prominent in Uncanny X-Men. Emma was with Cyclops at the time, but Namor persuaded her with his smooth, "Why can't we do this? You're not married, you're just bound by a whim and a word." Can you feel how much he wishes Sue would leave Reed in that sentence? Cause I can. So these two would hook up and are quite the power couple. They also work because they both know it's a no strings attached type deal, but they're both really cold. Ice cold. I wasn't surprised by this. I mean, Emma and Scott's relationship started off as a psychic affair where she would sometimes roleplay as Jean. And there were strong hints that Namor likes how much Emma looks like Sue. It's all very messed up, which is par for the course for a villain relationship. It's to be expected in my opinion, like they're not great people. It's not that odd that they would have flawed relationships when even the so-called virtuous heroes do. But you do get some gems in there, surprises. Number 5. The Hood and Madame Mask. So just after saying that, we have a surprisingly Swedish one. So the Hood is a newer villain created in 2002, while Madame Mask is from the 60s and was a villainous romantic interest for Iron Man. Brian Michael Bendis wanted to do something with the Hood, as he felt he was a great new creation that not a lot was being done with. And one of the things he did was give him a romance with Madame Mask. And what can I say? I'm a sucker for the I don't care how you look angle. Like he sees the villain within and was there for it. For a time. And also, can we talk about how Madame Mask and Iron Man used to make out with their masks on? How? I have questions. Was it just metal bashing against each other? That's what it looks like. Number 4. Scandal Savage and Knockout. Scandal Savage is also a newer creation from 2005 made for Gail Simone's Secret Six series. She was the daughter of Vandal Savage, meaning he was finally catching up with Ra's al Ghul in the children department. She would be an integral member of the Secret Six and form a relationship with Knockout, who first debuted in Superboy Volume 3, Number 1 back in 1994. She was a former female Fury, so this was a power couple for sure, and one of the more together villain relationships out there for a time. But Scandal's also the type to compartmentalize and keep her feelings close to her chest. This relationship gained attention for being an open queer relationship. Gail Simone is all about that. Number 3. Mystique and Sabertooth. So Mystique and Sabertooth's union is one that produces horrifying results for the Marvel Universe, in that the two have a son together, Graydon Creed, a huge figure in the anti-mutant movement. He formed the Friends of Humanity. Mystique keeps an eye on Graydon, who she gave up for adoption, and wow, that must be a really disappointing stakeout. So Mystique seduced Sabertooth, aka Victor Creed, while he was in Germany on a mission, and she was undercover as a spy. So at first, not exactly the most out and open pairing, though it would become one later on. Mystique isn't bound by what people look like. They're both passionate and have a kind of instinctual understanding of each other. They can be a bit of a bastion in between the madness that is their lives. Did you know they had a team-up comic? Yeah, they did. Sabertooth and Mystique. So people were here for this. You don't just get a team-up comic. Well, I mean, sometimes you do. They're trying to boost one of the popularities of the characters. But it has to be people the company thinks fans will want to see together. Number 2. Carnage and Shriek. Yes, there was a romance for Carnage, bizarre twisted romance, just like you'd expect, well if you were expecting a romance at all. Both of these characters are from the 90s. Her and Carnage would team up in the event Maximum Carnage, a crossover from 1993, which was as extreme as it sounds. She is one of the people Cassidy Carnage frees when he escapes from Ravencroft. They would recruit Doppelganger, Demoglobin, and Carrion and place themselves in the position of being parents to them like a dysfunctional symbiote family. Shriek was all over him, and some fans were all over this, just crazy villains doing their utmost to, well, do what villains do best. These two still get fan art. There's kind of a proto-Joker Harley thing going on here, but it branches off pretty quickly.
What in the name of?
It is my master, Dormammu, who confers this gift upon you, Cassidy.
And number 1. Thanos and Hella. You probably saw this one. This was one of those things that got articles galore. Articles with headlines like Thanos and Hella just got steamy. No, stop. Why all the press? Well, Thanos and Hella were big in the MCU popularity charts at the time. This began in the unworthy Thor #5. But really, is it that odd? Hela is the goddess of death, and Thanos was formerly obsessed with death. So it's really almost like a transference. Two cosmic beings who will be around for much longer than most of their enemies. Though, well, not Thor, because he's nigh immortal. Do you support this, or do you feel like it was one of those horizontal marketing things to try and draw attention? Cross-promotion is very real and sometimes is subtle. Number 10. Magneto and the Wasp. Magneto has been on the side of good before. He's even run Xavier's school for him, like when he died. That first time, not the other times. Sometimes. Their friendship is bizarre but strong, so he counts, even though in the arc where this happened, he was in more of an anti-hero mode. This occurred during the massively successful Marvel event Secret Wars, the first one from 1984, not the sequel or the new one from 2015. In this first one, a group of heroes and villains are suddenly plucked from existence and dumped onto a planet to duke it out, to battle each other and see who will win. And when they're grabbed, on the side of the heroes, Magneto is there, so hardly a reach, barely a stretch. So in Secret Wars, Magneto kidnaps Wasp by trapping her in a metal ball and taking her over to his base, as he was driven out by the heroes at the start of the event because they didn't trust him. Well, Charles wanted to keep him there, but he was overruled. He kidnaps Wasp and begins to lay it on real thick. He's not a monster, he wants to discuss a team up, he respects her as a leader. She was leading the Avengers at this point. He thinks she's beautiful, and it looks like it's working, making out all over the place. But haha, it was a ruse. She was playing along to learn his plan to take back to the heroes. But for this issue where it's happening, I'm like, man, if only it wasn't so kidnappy and creepy. I can get behind this, and say what you want about Magneto, but he's not gonna slap her in the face. Number 9. Black Canary and Hawkeye. Yes, you heard that right, you haven't gone mad. But they're from two separate companies, you cry. Why do they only hire fake nerds? Calm down, it's okay. DC and Marvel have done more crossovers than people think, and this occurred during one of them, specifically in JLA/Avengers. In this story, Kronos, with a K, had smashed the two realities together, creating a combined universe, but not an amalgam one. In this one, they were still separate characters. In the amalgam universe, they were all fused together like Darkclaw. So in this story, we see reality shift and reshape itself over and over, and in one of these shifts, not only is Hawkeye a member of the Justice League, but he's with Black Canary, and he apparently crossed dimensions to be with her. The League seems behind this too, with Diana proclaiming that they're a cute couple to Batman, but Green Arrow looks salty and pressed, as he should. A blip, but we'll explore a crossover couple more in depth a little later. Number 8. SpiderMan and Mockingbird. So Spider-Man has had many a superpowered or superhero girlfriend, and one of them has been Mockingbird, who was actually married to Hawkeye for a bit. I'm telling you, Hawkeye, secret relationship ninja. Now, Spider-Man and Mockingbird was set up as a bit of a mismatch, but was also supposed to be the relationship that was going to help Marvel move past One More Day. One More Day is the infamous storyline that ended Peter and MJ's marriage via demon divorce, and for many, MJ and Peter are endgame. So this was a relationship. She was Spider-Man's super spy girlfriend, who started hooking up with him while Peter was the head of Parker Industries, and had his life in order. However, from the start there were signs, like for example, Bobby didn't find Peter funny, and he quips all the time. Red flags. And then Peter would be reset again. So he would go from I have a job and things are working out right back to he's a menace and he has no job and can't figure anything out, time to crash on her couch and then go find a roommate. Yeah, so she didn't want much to do with this Peter. I can't imagine why. And now has a very looking down on, mean to him, but she secretly still cares dynamic. Or she did. These things shift. Mostly now it's a, hey, we used to date, and it's super awkward. You know how we could have avoided all of this? By having writers who understand that writing marriage can be interesting and dynamic. You just have to apply more than baseline effort. And I'm gonna rein in my salt, because I'm about to reveal my true form. A little Star Trek joke for you. Number 7, Robin and Spoiler. So this Robin is again Tim Drake. So much Tim on these lists, and for younger fans I know it's like, Tim? So Tim Drake for a time had quite the relationship with Spoiler, Stephanie Brown. This was the persona she took on before her death and subsequent resurrection in War Games, where she was Robin. As her death was met with an immediate and intense backlash, especially because it could be read as largely being Batman's fault, and not for a good reason either. She would later become Batgirl, but while she was Spoiler, she was initially largely a foil for Robin. She was the daughter of the villain Cluemaster, who is largely a knockoff of the Riddler, and her and Robin had a teen pregnancy plot. And it was acclaimed. People really enjoyed these two together and felt it was a fresh and more mature look at a teen romance for the time. However, this would end after the whole Robin shenanigans where she was Robin. But they would still have a bit of a push and pull. We were together. It's too bad. It was a unique dynamic. This was who Tim was with when Jubilee was trying to hit on him, by the way. Fun fact. Number 6, Psylocke and Cyclops. So Cyclops has a thing for telepaths, and also for cheating apparently. This occurred in the 90s and was when she joined an ex-team that Cyclops was leading and found herself drawn to him, decided to seduce him. He didn't really object too much at first. He loves the psychic mindscape play stuff. So this was still cheaty, cause we're past him abandoning his wife and baby to hang out with Jean, but this followed pretty shortly after and he was now back with Jean. And so to some fans it was like, okay, so did Madeline mean nothing? Did Jean mean nothing? Like these are supposed to be the great loves of his life. And then here comes Psylocke. She would employ some of the same mind play things that Emma would do later on in the new X-Men, which were also super effective. Minus the creepy mindscape therapy pretending to be Jean, there's a lot. He would ultimately stay with Jean though, and then Cable would show up as an adult, so no time for cheating. Number 5, Barbara Gordon and Ted Kord. So this occurred during Birds of Prey, and was set up as a separate romance for Barbara outside of Dick Grayson. Ted Kord was drawn to Barbara because of her intelligence and attitude, and she enjoyed his easygoing but still serious when needed attitude. The two would enter into a tentative relationship, however ultimately would decide that they would rather be friends, / be with other people. This culminated with them leaning in for a kiss and being like, I have something to say, and she says, I'm getting serious about someone else, at the same time as he says, can we just be friends? The two have a good laugh about it and there were no hard feelings. Any lingering potential romantic feelings would be cut short by his murder by Maxwell Lord. And since his resurrection post universe-wide reboots, things have been different. Number 4, Captain America, Falcon, and Lady Thor. Listen, I need to specify, when you have multiples running around at the same time, so you know what I'm talking about. Like some people get really mad when you call Lady Thor, and they're like, she's Thor, and I'm like, yes, but second Thor, and we have adjectives and descriptors for a reason. She's not even Thor anymore, there's just so much happening there. So this happened in all new, all different, and was, well, there was a battle, and they're colleagues, and the dialogue after their kiss is really weird. Firstly, everyone is shocked, like they've never seen a kiss before, and then she's all, you certainly taste how I imagined Captain America would taste, and he goes, you taste like a goddess. What do both of those statements mean? Like Squirrel Girl tastes like hazelnuts, that I understand, but what does Captain America taste like? Apple pie? McDonald's? I don't know. And a goddess, so light, energy, and pain? Also, she's not a goddess, maybe more like, you taste like a magic hammer. So yes, this was a thing that happened. They taste how the other expected. Tale as old as time. This ship is called Thundershield, by the way. Sounds like a great band, AC/DC all the way. Thundershield. Number 3, Scarlet Witch and Brother Voodoo, or Dr. Voodoo. Time for a Scarlet Witch pairing that doesn't involve mind control. Hooray! Scarlet Witch has recently had far more emphasis placed on the witch part of her persona, and was even recently retconned to not being a mutant anymore, which I hope gets changed back. Come on, pendulum retcons, where are you when I need you? Well, Brother Voodoo, Jericho Drum, is a powerful sorcerer, and was even the Sorcerer Supreme for a time. These two decide to explore what the potential future could hold together as a couple for a bit, and it was sweet. They both know the struggles the other has gone through, and the danger and power of magic. It's so wholesome. He asks her if she's okay, there's none of the judgment that comes from other people. She's all like, I've never been with anyone who understands both sides of me. And he's all, after their kiss, that was sudden. Good, but sudden. See, that's something cute after a kiss, not you taste how I thought you would taste. Bleh. Wholesome cuteness. More of this, please. I support. Number 2, Kyle Rayner and Donna Troy. Just before we get started, in the new Teen Titans in the 80s, in that canon, for a time, Donna had a husband and a kid, and then the editors decided that that wasn't relatable for teens, so they had her family die in a car crash, so she could go back to going on dates. Because who can ever relate to having a family? More boys! Where the dates at? Anyways, Kyle was one of the boys for her to go on dates with. There would even later on be kind of a love triangle between her, Kyle, and Jason Todd. But that was the same series that would see her calling Jason Todd retarded. Do you get it? This was during Countdown. So in all honesty, all of that salt aside, this was cute. The two went on dates in space, and balanced the duality of their secret identities and wanting a normal life. I mean, Donna was down for that. She married a normal guy. So teammates, hopefully more. That's Kyle talking, not me. They'll bring this up on occasion. It depends how much in favor Kyle is, especially post Hal's resurrection. Sometimes it can be like, Kyle? Who? And number 1. So what could top all of this? The Wasp and Deadpool. You're welcome. That's right, so Deadpool's Secret Wars number 4. This showed Janet sleeping with the hot in quotation marks, mustache Deadpool. This was a thing that happened. Well, chop it up to that melded universe, bizarre, weird, timey-wimey stuff going on. Later, there would be some drama about it, and it would come out that while this was going on, the deed, she was calling him Magnus, which is Magneto's name. So in the comics, it's far more common to hear Magneto called Magnus than Eric. So yeah, remember I told you that she hooked up with Magneto in Secret Wars? And apparently she's been thinking about it since then. Like dang, it's been decades. Well, poor Deadpool, his feelings were hurt. People are just so awful to him. Go back to cable, sweetie, it'll be better. Number 10. Starting it off with a please, they hinted at it, I wish this had been pursued, couple. The Riddler and Harley Quinn. So after Harley made her debut into comics from Batman the Animated Series, her and the Joker split pretty quickly. Yes, she still had feelings for him and could at times be lured back, but for the most part she was striking out on her own with a solo series featuring fun team-ups and eventually with the Gotham City Sirens. That series would see her join forces with Poison Ivy and Catwoman. During one arc, they need to enlist the help of a quasi-reformed Riddler, who Harley flirts with hard to get him to help. But the real hinting comes at the end of the arc, wherein after helping them, Harley gives Riddler a peck on the cheek, which he pulls away from, and the comic proceeds to have the most melodramatic narration about it of all time. I see the hurt in her eyes as I pull away. I turn quickly so she won't see the hurt in mine. Whoa, hold on, did I miss a page? That escalated quickly, and frankly, I wish it had escalated more. But the new 52 is around the corner, and with it a new Harley who murdered basements full of children and wore her ex-lover's face. In my heart, I'll always have Quiddler. Number 9. Destiny and Mystique. This is an interesting one because at first it wasn't happening canonically, not overtly or officially. However, it was entirely happening in the subtext as far as fans were concerned, only it was being coded. And then, in 2019, it was flat out confirmed thanks to the History of the Marvel Universe number 2, which canonized it. Which I bring up just to have a ha, I wasn't crazy. They said I was mad, but they were wrong. So Destiny is Irene Adler, and her and Mystique have been in love since the 1900s. The two would form the second evil brotherhood of mutants together and just be constants in each other's lives. Mystique could be herself with Destiny and express all her concerns about Rogue and all kinds of other things. And funnily enough, worries about the future with a precog. That must be interesting. So in the past, Mystique would sometimes transform into a man at times when these two were out in public. It was postulated that a lot of this was to skirt around the comics code authority, while others feel it was a fanon that grew to become accepted and has been incorporated into canon. Either way, I'm not reaching, and it feels good. Number 8. Batman and Black Canary. For most people, this comes to us from an Elseworlds non-canon story, but I'm putting it because everything about Frank Miller's All-Star Batman and Robin is hilarious, well to me anyway. At one point in this tale, Batman ends up showing up after Black Canary has taken out some bike thugs, and actually he shows up just in time to help, and the two proceed to make out. It's all battle tension and fishnets. However, there have been some hints of this in main continuity from way back, like late Silver Age, early Bronze Age. Personally, I don't hate it. This panel about them breaking the bond of loneliness, it kinda got me. I feel like Bronze Age Batman would treat her better than Bronze Age Arrow, or Modern Age Arrow, even though she crossed universes to be with Green Arrow pre-Crisis. She'd also be good to all the Robins. Oh god, I think I ship this now. People like to throw this into Elseworld stories, but maybe it's time to shake up that main verse. No more Bat Cat. Bat Canary. No one would stand for it, I know. Number 7. She-Hulk and Tony Stark. These two are players in the Marvel Universe, so it seemed like an inevitability that at one point they would end up together. It's more of a teammates with benefits type deal. But they have some deep discussions, and Tony respects her as a teammate, a friend, and a lawyer. Before what I like to call a digital era, they were pretty close. She also calls him out on his nonsense, which he oftentimes needs. His ego can get out of control. Still, these are often quick things, so some people are like, what? That happened? Yes, it did. There's also this joke about how he slept with Gamora and it was lame. That the sex was lame, not the joke. That really varies. Humor is tricky and very subjective. Number 6. Tony Stark and the Wasp. This is a new one from the 2018 Iron Man run actually, and they were really excited about it. This got a very lovingly drawn cover. So Jan and Tony. This is one of those pairings that's like, okay, sure, why not? Most of their stories are about them being busy and having to squeeze in dates, but it's a really smooth relationship, not too much conflict. Not yet. They also have cutesy puns like, don't worry, I won't sting you. Too late, I'm already stung. No man, give me that villain banter. This was during a movie date. It's also normal and nice. For domesticity lovers, it's great. But still for some fans, it's a bit of an, okay, did you just draw names out of a hat and be like who hasn't dated yet? Still, some are just glad she's not with Hank because of that one panel. But there's not only more to that panel, but more to how their relationship soured. Still, if we can retcon away entire universes, why can't we retcon that out? Some things stick no matter how much retcon or reboot scrub you use. Will Tony and Janet last? Probably not. Number 5. Wolverine and Squirrel Girl. Yes, you heard that right. Just think about it, cause this happened, largely off panel, but they linger on the hints of it when it comes up, and apparently it ended badly. This is mentioned in New Avengers number 7 from 2010, when Wolverine enters the mansion and sees her going, "Doreen," and she goes, "James," so you know it was serious. "I thought we promised to never see each other again." Then he has to awkwardly tell her that he's on the team, so she'll be seeing much more of him. Squirrel Girl was Jessica Jones and Luke Cage's nanny at the time. Well, their daughter's nanny, not their nanny. This led to speculation that vacillates between being confirmed and unconfirmed that Wolverine, or James, was Squirrel Girl's first love and that he took her virginity. Cause these are the facts the world needs. The two would grow to at least be cordial. Number 4. Spider-Man and Kitty Pryde. What romance list is complete without a trip to the now infamous Ultimate Verse? Well, many lists actually, but not this one. Marvel's Ultimate Verse did a lot of tweaking of characters' ages and gave us a whole group of heroes firmly teens, lots of them going to school together, or at least learning that they were the same age when identities were revealed. Such was the case with Spider-Man and Shadowcat. He actually started dating her after breaking up with Mary Jane because he was tired of always putting her in danger and worrying about her. And Kitty, thanks to her power set and training, could more than hold her own. They would also team up and fight crime together. This would be one of Peter's great loves in the Ultimate Verse, and provide much confusion for readers who accidentally picked up an Ultimate Verse comic thinking it was the main verse one. You can make the label as big as you want, mistakes still happen. Of course, Spidey would die in this verse, making way for Miles Morales, although he would be brought back to life, cause death in comics means as much as Peter's word that he's gonna show up someplace on time. Nothing. Number 3. Black Widow and Daredevil. This is actually, or was actually, one of the great Marvel romances. Matt Murdock and Natasha was serious business, and people who remember have made some cool crossover fanbits, check them out. These two loved each other, and Black Widow would even confess to him that she loved him, which is a big deal for her. But Daredevil was always worrying that it wasn't meant to be, or that they were just too different, or too dedicated to their respective missions and different goals. Ultimately, he would prove himself right. He would leave Hell's Kitchen but would grow resentful and miss his city. So he would go back, and eventually the two would both be involved in more famous romances. Daredevil with Elektra, and currently the big one for Natasha is her and Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier. Thanks to the whole backstory that they knew each other in the Red Room, which is a great retcon. Not all retcons are created equal, some are good. Oh man, the salt, I'm sorry, you probably felt that through the screen. Writers remember this happened though, so it comes up, but for new readers it can be a what? Wait! Number 2. Captain America and Scarlet Witch. You have no idea how badly I wanted to put Wanda and Doom on here, but there was mind control involved, so I went wholesome instead. Quality content. Also, I just learned people are now calling this pairing Scarlet America, and I'm here for it, but also Captain Scarlet, or Captain Witch. Think about it. This has happened more than once, such as in the comic Captain America and the Falcon, or the Uncanny Avengers, just to name a couple. Couple fun. These two often strike people as an odd pair, but it's a soft pairing. The two as people who can trust each other with their pain, and also Cap trusts Wanda even after everything, which is a big deal for her. And she sees some of the darker sides of Cap, like his post-war trauma, and can help him through it. But like I said, this one comes out of nowhere for some people. But this could maybe work? Give wholesome power couples a chance. And number 1. Rogue and Deadpool. Yes, this happened. Here they are making out in the sky, something comics like to portray as if it would be romantic and not terrifying. This is from the same run as our last number, the Uncanny Avengers, or the team known as Avengers Unity Squad. While on this team, Rogue and Deadpool got to know each other, and Rogue found herself coming to like Wade, who was on more of an even keel at the time. She really started to develop a soft spot for him when she learned about his daughter Ellie, and saw how hard he was trying to be a good father. So the two would have a fling. It would be brief and have an artificially constructed moment, where she kisses him, in the sky, and absorbs his powers and his appearance, even though she probably shouldn't have absorbed that part. But it's still sweet, because she says that she doesn't care what he looks like. This was adorable, two misunderstood souls together, but now it's treated as a joke, especially in the Rogue Gambit miniseries. I don't know, I thought it was cute. What do you think? Number 10. Superboy and Knockout. We're talking about Con-El from the 90s, so not the first Superboy, that was Clark. This is Con-El, he's a clone, and this is the 90s, so he's just a regular clone. He's not Clark and Lex's son yet, which is the greatest retcon of all time. So Con-El appeared during the reign of the Supermen, when there were 4 Supermen in Metropolis to replace Superman post his death, aka plot stall for his wedding. Now one of Con-El's things was that he was a bit of a player, and by that I mean horn dog. He was exactly at boob height, and this was of many people, and oh boy did he love it. So him and Knockout. Knockout is a former female Fury, and when she got to Earth she started a rivalry and flirtation with Superboy just for fun. She thought he was cute. She loved his grungy, pointless belts. These two would eventually form a friendship and share many a kiss, though some were unconscious on his part. Her name was Knockout. But for the most part it was a will they won't they, there's good in her. People forget about this one because Knockout would end up with Scandal Savage, and Superboy would be retconned many a time. But 90s Con is back with his half sunglasses. He's too cool for school. I don't care, I like this design. Number 9. Harley and Deadshot. Putting this one lower because this has been adapted a couple of times, like in Batman Assault on Arkham as well as Suicide Squad. And of the two, which are basically the same, if you have the choice, check out Assault on Arkham. It's more cohesive and animated, which is a rich medium that deserves more love, attention, and our support. So Harley and Deadshot were a big item in the New 52, which placed Harley on the Suicide Squad. Deadshot was Harley's first big officially depicted relationship after the Joker. They were still playing coy with Ivy, remembering that Ivy had a personality and villainous goals of her own. Salt over. This relationship was unstable. Deadshot is actually suicidal. He wants to die, or at least did. They've eased up on that quite a bit. But New 52 Harley was also something. This relationship was hot and heavy, but really fell apart when she took Mr. J's face and put it on Deadshot. The Joker had cut off his face at this point, and then tried to make out with it. The implication was that she liked Deadshot because he was crazy too, but not crazy enough because he was like no faceplay. Number 8. Superman and Supergirl from Action Comics number 289 from 1962. Kissin' Cousins, the comic. This is where Superman marries Supergirl, his cousin. Legit, I'm not making it up. So Superman in this issue is talking about how he would marry his cousin since it's legal on Krypton, and he for some reason cares about that even though he's lived his whole life on Earth with Earth values, but I digress, and he does bring up it's legal some places on Earth too. So he's been thinking about this. He actually tells Supergirl that if he ever were to get married, it would be to someone like her. Through Silver Age magic, he ends up on another Earth, and there meets a grown-up alternate version of his cousin named Luma Lanai, and she is super into the idea. And Clark, he can't resist someone with 2 L's in their name. Lois Lane, Lana Lang, Lex Luthor. Yeah, this comic has been pushed out of the minds of many readers, and Luma seems to have been permanently erased in Crisis. Sometimes they still bring this concept up, like them flirting, but stop. They're not Luke and Leia, please stop. Number 7. Wonder Girl and Robin. We're talking about Cassandra Sandsmark as Wonder Girl and Tim Drake as Robin. Now initially Wonder Girl was with Superboy, Connor Kent, the version that was Lex and Clark's son, well biologically at least, because he was made up of both of their DNA. But then Connor died, and Connor was also Tim's best friend, and so the two grieved together, and in their grief ended up seeking comfort in each other. Comfort that bloomed into a relationship, and a genuine one, a non-Connor wrapped up one. Though there was guilt, much guilt. Even more guilt when it turned out that like most people, Connor got better and came back, and his best friend was with his girlfriend. Awkward. Tim Drake had drama, I missed him. He's been a bit more sidelined in Rebirth. Yeah, he's Red Robin, but it's not the same. The Robin cycle in the who's the one we know the least to do what with right now department. Number 6. Spider-Man and Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers. This happened when she was Ms. Marvel. Spider-Man and Carol are contemporaries, and at one point he had developed quite the interest in her, a crush. And she, for all of her sniping at him, does respect him. He actually kinda barters for their date. She needs a favor from him, and he's all, I'll do it if I get a date, and she's like, okay, but clearly doesn't mind and is all, I trust you. She probably thought he wouldn't show up given his track record, but he does. So the two end up going out to eat. It's not the worst date either of them have been on. She asks him about Osborn, they chat histories, it's pretty cozy, but they end up not being able to talk about anything but work. Cause really, that's the most of what they have in common, but this pairing would creep up a few times. It's not the most popular for either of these two though. Number 5. Hawkeye and SpiderWoman. Hawkeye is everywhere in the background like a ninja, that pairing you never knew about. But then it's like, oh yeah, Hawkeye. Unless you're a Hawkeye fan, then it's I never forgot Hawkeye. So this started kind of awkwardly. Spider-Woman was crushing on him, but he was married at the time. But when she learns he's not married, it's open season. Now's the time for Jessica Drew. The two strike up flirtation, and it's awkward and kinda cute. It even starts off with a hey. And if Into the Spider-Verse taught us anything, it's that when you use the hey, that's it, you're in. These two would hook up on a stakeout and they would get one of those steamy covers. You know, the one with the arms locked around each other, those types of deals. This would blossom into one of those banter-based couples that seemed to have a solid base. And it was an organic evolution. She saw, she liked, she waited till appropriate, she conquered. But like most things in comics, so few of these relationships last. No, Hawkeye is not Jessica Drew's baby daddy. though that could have been cute. He could have had a not-so-secret plot twist for not doing my classic romance with Natasha family. What a mouthful. Number 4. Guy Gardner and Ice. So this was a big romance during the JLI run, that being the Justice League International. It started when Guy was injured and reverted back to his pre-brain damage personality, so it was really nice and sweet, and Ice was super into that. However, it didn't last, and he would go back to his more brash, abrasive personality, which while it may have been a hit with fans, was not that much one with Tora, and she tried to stick with him but found herself being drawn to Superman, who had that sweet personality she had first been drawn to in Guy, and it developed into a bit of a love triangle. I wouldn't want to compete with Clark Kent for the ladies. Have you seen his forehead curl? Perfection. Still, this romance is remembered fondly as a kind of mismatched pairing that fans still wish would have worked. Could they have found a way? Maybe. Number 3. Wolverine and Domino. This is a very physical thing. These two are drawn to each other on an animalistic, passionate level, and while at times they give in to these urges, there's lots of talk of him picking up on her scent, which can vary in readers from hot to gross, please no thank you. These two work together in clandestine ops, and Domino gets Logan, both sides, the Wolverine side and the man he once was and sometimes still is. Plus, Domino is willing to do what needs to be done, which is a trait Wolverine always appreciates, because that's pretty much his creed. So these two can talk, but also break things off when they need to. Both of these two are more well known for other pairings though, like Cable and Domino and Wolverine and so many others. Number 2. Jubilee and Robin, yet another crossover couple, and we're again dealing with Tim Drake. This is from DC vs. Marvel from 1996, which would see the heroes from these universes fighting, so team-ups, and they would kind of try and match them. So Jubilee would go up against Robin. Well, they kind of fight, but also she's got a huge crush and throws herself at him hard, despite his assertions that he has a girlfriend. She would even cross universes for him and the two would share a kiss. The idea that Jubilee is a sidekick may leave some people pressed, but in 1996, was that really inaccurate? You decide, and leave triggered comments down below. These crossovers were interesting and made all the better by the fact that the writers did try to keep everybody in tone. So who won this fight? Well, Robin, but they were flirting so hard it barely constitutes a fight. He roped her up with a batarang thing. Also, I love that when she crosses dimensions to see him, he's not like, oh my god, interdimensional travel. It's just like, what are you doing in Gotham? Batman trained him well. And in at number 1, Nightwing and Raven. Teen Titans go. So for a while, Raven was completely in love with Dick Grayson, or appeared to be, but he was with Corey, aka Starfire, but that didn't stop her from making out with him a whole bunch. And she was encouraged by the fact that when she kissed him, she sensed feelings of love. He did love her, but not like that, although for a while it was hinted that he did, but with her kiss when she's in her white robes and he's in his horrible disco Nightwing suit with the high collar, and is all, oh Raven, I've waited so long. Then after it's all done is, I'm sorry, I don't know why I did that. And he didn't, there was chicanery. This would all end up resolved, and Starfire and Raven would team up in a mean-spirited joke that saw Raven making out with Dick, only for Starfire to fly into the window and be like, haha, got you, she's not in love with you anymore. Take that. Hilarious. I'm worried about Dick, even more now that he's Rick. Give me Dick back. You can snicker all you want. The more we prove that we can say his name like adults, the sooner he turns back into Dick. Number 10, Batman and Wonder Woman. So this one is at number 10 because, well, this pops up a decent amount and was even part of the DCAU, that being the DC animated universe, with Wonder Woman being a pretty aggressive go-getter about it. Most people in that canon remember that episode where Wonder Woman gets turned into a pig, and to change her back, Batman has to sing for Cersei, and he does. It's all very sweet. However, in comics, this has been flirted with as well. It's usually as an Elseworlds thing, but they were also together during the Obsidian Age saga, a post-crisis arc that now no longer counts, like so many things. So many universes reset. This one falls into a Man of Steel, Woman of Kleenex argument for some, saying that Batman would be too fragile. I mean, remember when she shoved him in Snyder's Justice League? Another series that was hinting hard at this. When people tend to pair Wonder Woman and the Trinity, it tends to be with Superman, but that will run into a backlash with some of being too obvious, where they felt that Batman and Diana is a more unique dynamic. Which do you prefer and why? Tell me down below. How do you feel about Wonderbat? Yes, I use the ship name. I'm that type of person. You know this by now. Number 9, Nightwing and the Huntress. Here we go. Post-crisis. So Helena Wayne has become Helena Bertinelli and is now a loose cannon who does what it takes to get the job done. She would end up having a relationship, a brief one, with Nightwing during one of his more angsty periods. They would even have a mini-series together where their dynamics would bounce off of each other. Her succeed at all costs and his Batman training, which more often expressed itself in the need for limits. It was a 4-issue mini. He tries to get her to change her ways and gives her the whole "we're both lonely" speech, which is a bold play, but if you get the person at the right time, can be super effective, and it works here. I mean, this gets them sleeping together, and then Barbara calls and it's super awkward because they were a thing and he's all, shh, you'll wake her up. Like, way to hint, Dick, you didn't have to say that. She's over there. So this was a kinda sorta love triangle, but not really. It ended up being treated as a bit more of a physical thing, and it would carry over into new timelines, but it's not for most people anyway who people envision either of these characters with. Dick has his ship war with Barbara and Starfire, and there was a big push for Huntress and the Question, largely thanks to the Justice League cartoon, where they were super cute.
Maybe you're not looking in the right direction. You're the League's data guy, the conspiracy buff, right? Wildcat says you're a nut job.
Funny, he says the same thing about you.
He's right.
Number 8, Carol Danvers and Tony Stark from 1610, the Ultimate Verse. Let's go with the Ultimate Verse early in this list, get it out of the way, and show you a world where Tony Stark and Carol Danvers did hook up. In main verse, these two were friends, and Tony would end up helping Carol when she turned to alcohol to try to deal with all of the stuff that had happened to her, all that messed up stuff post-Rogue. Later, she would beat him into a coma for having a different perspective than her, and then the comics would break their spine and yours to make you forget that happened, by giving Carol another origin and mini, one where Tony was so supportive he called her Care Bear and was like, "It's all good, take as much time off the Avengers as you need, Care Bear." Care Bear stare. Anyway, in the Ultimate Verse, hot and steamy. They were equals too, kinda into it, but the rest of the Ultimate Verse is such a mess. It won't let us have nice things, except for Miles. Number 7, the Samaritan and Winged Victory. Let's get some non-DC or Marvel peeps on these lists. We're gonna look at Astro City, and two of its premier heroes, who happen to have a sweet but also slightly baffling relationship. So the Samaritan is a Superman reconstruction, and he is a man out of time who is completely focused on saving people, so much so that he neglects himself completely, even though he is lonely. And Winged Victory is similarly focused, enjoying her superhero persona much more than her civilian one. The rest of the members of the Honor Guard, the not Justice League, set these two up, and they proceed to have a disastrous date. First, they go out as supers, but everyone is too focused on them, so then they change into their civilian identities and go to a diner, which starts out okay, but then the two start arguing about their different hero philosophies, like how as a feminist hero, Winged Victory saves women first when given the choice, while the Samaritan saves who is closest. She also feels he hides in his hero persona and could do more as himself, while he feels she also hides behind hers. They end up leaving in a huff, but ultimately they both feel they had a good time and gave the other a lot to think about. They share a kiss and are later revealed to be a couple, both having taken some of what the other said to heart. Number 6, Hawkeye and She-Hulk. So Hawkeye's the relationship ninja of Marvel. You turn around, a wild Hawkeye appeared. He used charm. It's super effective.
I can't. I'm an Avenger. They're my partners now.
She-Hulk is also known for her relationships, so it seemed inevitable that these two should end up sharing a kiss or two. They do, but it's usually She-Hulk initiating it as either a distraction or a thanks. It's an offer, but not one that either seems to take too seriously. I would take it seriously. Kiss me, Jen. Although she does then throw him after. Is it worth it? Probably. Better than kissing Hawkeye. I'd kiss Tony, even though he has that goatee. Okay, enough. Moving on. Number 5, Carol Danvers and Wonder Man. This was one of the bigger romances for Carol. Poor Wonder Man. Outside of comics, so many people are like, who? He vanished for quite a number of years after his first appearance because of DC. They were kicking up a stink over them having Wonder Woman and Wonder Man being too similar. But when they then introduced Power Girl after Marvel had introduced Power Man, all bets were off. So here's a picture of the two of them making out. She was Ms. Marvel. Fun fact, Wonder Man has the brain patterns used to make Vision, and had a thing for / with Scarlet Witch. Wonder Man and Carol makes sense, but it's a blip for most, and very much part of the let's pretend Carol was never Ms. Marvel campaign going on at Marvel. Side note, I loved her Ms. Marvel costume. Fight me. They have their most prominent thing during the Mighty Avengers. In fact, Ms. Marvel recruits him. This one would fade though, along with Wonder Man for most people. They just keep forgetting about him. But not us. Right guys? Number 4, Wally West 2 and Raven. So this occurred in Rebirth, which presented an interesting conundrum vis-a-vis Wallace West or Wally 2, who had been brought into existence to replace Wally 1, who had been erased because as mentioned, Dan Didio hates him. So Wally West came back in Rebirth, but Wallace was still around, and if he had been erased out of existence for no reason, tables would have been flipped. Some characters will get tables flipped for them and others won't, we all know this. So he was kept around and was on Damian's Titans team as Kid Flash, and him and Raven, their relationship was very cute and sweet. It was a callback to the new Teen Titans, and Wally 1's feelings for Raven. Only this Raven seems more keen to return Wallace's feelings. He's super earnest, he actually says, "Thanks for sweeping me off my feet." And when she does finally kiss him, she's like, "You told me I should take more risks." Aww, kawaii. Number 3, Ant-Man and Jessica Jones. We're talking about Scott Lang here. This occurs during Alias. Now when most people think of Jessica Jones, they think of her and Luke Cage. They got married, they have a daughter, their marriage was a big deal, because you don't see a lot of official interracial couples in the States' media. But early in Alias, which is Jessica Jones' first appearance, she is actually involved with Scott Lang. He really likes her, but it's not the healthiest relationship, as she's still working through a lot of her trauma, not only from the Purple Man, but from the rest of the superhero community who beat her into a coma. So she ended up cheating on him and getting pregnant, and he ended up leaving when he learned that he wasn't the father. These two were just at the wrong time. And also in Alias, her and Cage are friends, and he's the one person she can tell her darkest secret to, that there's a part of her that doesn't hate the Purple Man, even loves him even though she knows it's not real. And he doesn't judge her. That's husband material right there. Number 2, Beast and Dazzler. That's right, Hank McCoy and Dazzler. They had a mini-series team-up comic that was called Beauty and the Beast. So these two were an unlikely pairing that got together after Dazzler had been outed as a mutant, which had tanked her disco career. But Hank found her charming and lovely and vowed to stick by her side as she got back on her feet. These two would have a whirlwind romance, complete with upside-down kiss and dialogue like, "I don't know what I'm doing." One just goes along and does it. And also plenty of action and adventure and kidnapping and all the like. Pew pew. These two would break up because Dazzler realized she was using the romance as an escape from her problems rather than facing them head on. So it wasn't an equal relationship. So real talk, you know lots of why this exists is because they wanted to use this title, Beauty and the Beast. We all know it. And in at number 1, Silk and Spider-Man. This was one of those post One More Day and post Spider-Verse pairings. These two were all over each other, hot and heavy, but the reason that happens might squick you out, Their pheromones react together and force them to be very attracted to one another. It's a constant pull they must fight. Is this my high school fanfic? Who's been going through my files? This is, the we can't help ourselves thing. You can look at it a few ways. For me, I prefer when they can't help themselves because of figurative animal magnetism, not literal. These two would break up, and Silk is oft-times pretty mean to Spidey cause girl power? I don't know, she gets real salty at him. She should be salty at the writers. Our pheromones match, my stank matches your stank. Some love these two though and wish they would get back together and view them as endgame. Who's your endgame for Peter? Honestly, when they were together and it worked before you knew it was pheromones, it was pretty cute. Number 10, Sue Storm and Black Panther. So Black Panther was actually introduced in a Fantastic Four comic, Fantastic Four number 52 in 1966. He's the first African superhero in American comics. So that actress who was Storm and was all like, Storm was here first. Nah fam. Bow to the king. So when Black Panther first met Sue, the sparks flew. She was bathing in the river, which comics and media always like to pretend you can just do without, horrible parasites or fish touching you. And he sees her and is like, noise. And so he gets into the water too, and she's all, Black Panther, hey. And he's like, the Invisible Woman, Sue Richards. And she's all, cats don't like water. And he's like, but I'm no ordinary cat. And you are no ordinary woman. She's all, thanks. I'm glad someone noticed. Read. And then he asks her, are you married? Because the way you were looking at me, I thought that perhaps. This goes nowhere because it's the 60s and also cheating. But come on now, think about it. Also, this is what I wanted to ask you. Couples that nearly happened, or hookups that nearly happened, because I have tons of these. My mind is a Rolodex of useless hookup knowledge. Let me share this whole new world with you. Please. Number 9, Wally West and Donna Troy from Rebirth. So in the New Teen Titans in the 80s, Donna and Wally were friends. He was carrying a really big torch for Raven, and he also ended up recreating Donna from his memories after she was erased from existence in the 90s. It was weird. But in Rebirth, after the return of Wally, him and Donna, well, they started to feel differently about each other. And well, there was a bit of a love triangle between Wally, Donna, and Roy. Yeah, Roy. Roy wanted some of that Donna action. But when he showed up to confess to her, he was too late. Her and Wally had had a heart-to-heart and were kissing, nay, sucking face. So he sadly goes to stand in the hallway and he's all like, too slow, Harper, too slow. Was that a flash joke? Probably not. This pairing was cute, but I'm not over the erasure of Wally's wife and kids. Kids who were also superheroes, by the way. But heroes aren't allowed to have happy families, so says Dan Didio. I like to think that Donna saw Roy's backwards hat and was like, that's gonna be a no from me. Number 8, Elektra and the Punisher. Oh yes, this happened while they were both on Thunderbolts. It actually caused lots of jealousy for Deadpool because he was crushing on Elektra hard. The Punisher and Elektra, it makes sense on paper, sort of. They're both very intense, though this was brief, brief, and well, it ended badly. Elektra actually seemed up to trying to make a relationship work and seek compromise, and she knew that Frank wasn't over his dead family trauma, but was willing to meet him halfway. Well, he was already full on ready to kill her. He also belittles her for her affections for people in general and says it's her weakness. Yeah, it ended badly. She would have had a better time with Deadpool, to be honest. Are they a superhero couple? More like an anti-hero couple. Would we have had enough for an anti-hero couple list? Maybe, but that word doesn't trend as hard. They count. Number 7, Black Widow and Iron Man. So Black Widow is known for some of her great loves: Hawkeye, Daredevil, and more recently the Winter Soldier, but for a while she had quite the thing with Tony. Black Widow actually made her first appearance in an Iron Man story in Tales of Suspense number 52 back in 1964. Her and Tony would start off as enemies, but when she defected and ultimately became an Avenger, the two ended up having a bit of a thing, a romance. Finally, a legit couple. It was more of a physical thing, but still there were panels of pillow talk and banter and flirting. This was different from the Ultimate Verse, the 1610 universe, where her and Tony had a sex tape and he ultimately had to take her out after they got married because she was using him. No, this was 616. I supported it. Most people didn't though. Tony was not the most popular character at the time, and for many people it was more a question of who should she go back to, Hawkeye or the Daredevil during that time period. Daredevil was a huge thing. He even moved for her, but then he missed his area too much, so they broke up. Number 6, War Machine and Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers. Yep, Rhodey and Carol. There were even some people who were rooting for this in the MCU, but we knew that wasn't gonna happen. These two's relationship actually made sense. They both had military backgrounds, were both assertive leaders, they understood the demands of being a hero and could work around it. For a time, it was sweet. It showed a human side to both characters you didn't always get to see. A romance can do that if you use it effectively for maximum character development quite quickly, if you're clever about it. He was really supportive, but then Civil War II. Oh, Civil War II. Why? So Rhodey dies leading up to Civil War II. He's killed off super cheaply as a catalyst for Carol to go full Minority Report. So yeah, he pretty much got fridged, which is an equal opportunity thing no matter what people say. If you're a supporting character, a love interest, who's a character in your own right, and then you just get killed somewhere else, fridge. The panel is so dramatic too. No. It would have had more of an impact if Civil War II had been better, if he had stayed dead, and if after he came back the two had kept on dating. But none of those things happened. Some people still miss this pairing though. When it worked, it worked. Sometimes you just want something wholesome. Number 5, Venom and Valkyrie. Well, Agent Venom and Valkyrie. Yes, you heard that right. Don't let your dreams be dreams. When you think about this one's kind of polyamorous too, because the symbiote gets in on it as well. Lots of things to think about. This happened when the two were on the Secret Avengers in the lead up to A vs. X, an event that had a mixed reception. So these two, what can we say? It was odd, but it was a power couple, and it was different, a quasi couple. A bit of wisecracking alien/host with a being from another realm. For these two, it was awkward, a kind of step off my girlfriend. What, girlfriend? Did I say girlfriend? Oh no, that slipped out. So slightly derpy guy with above it girl, only they're both cool. This obviously didn't last, but it was a fun blip. Number 4, Star-Lord and Kitty Pryde. This was a big one. They even had a comic together, one of those team-up romances, so you know it was serious. This occurred post Guardians of the Galaxy in the MCU, which saw a complete revamping of Star-Lord's character in the comics, rendering him far more in line with the MCU edition. Star-Lord even proposed to her, but Kitty is a strong independent woman who don't need no man. She already had to break off a serious thing with Colossus ages ago, but well, she's back with him since breaking up with Star-Lord. Also, she was Star-Lord for a bit, taking on his persona. At the start of this, it was a long-distance relationship, but eventually turned into Kitty going to be with him in space. This was one that the writers really enjoyed doing, and you can tell. However, it would have meant a permanent shift for one of the characters, either Kitty in space or Peter on Earth, and well, that wasn't gonna happen long term. So these two didn't make it. Plus, sometimes fans get up in arms when new couples go up against a classic like Kitty and Colossus. Number 3, Rogue and Magneto. That's right, Rogue and the Master of Magnetism himself. Now their big romance happens outside of the main 616 timeline, but there were hints of it there. It specifically started in Uncanny X-Men number 274 when they're both trapped in the Savage Land. Trapped in the Savage Land for the X-Men is like being trapped in a cave for everybody else. No one can resist. The two have a brief thing, but it's over pretty quickly. In the Savage Land, when powers are defunct, when they are, Rogue can touch people. In the time before she had more control over her powers, this was a huge deal. In main canon, it would be a kind of will they, won't they, oh they kinda did kind of thing. She even had a relationship with his clone Joseph, though at first she thought that he was a de-aged amnesiac Magneto. and went for it. Their grand courtship would be them paired together in Age of Apocalypse, where they were just a couple. And some fans were into it, while others flipped the table asking where's Gambit. Since then, this still happens, and she's definitely slept with him since in main continuity. She's married to Gambit now at the time of this recording, or was. It's a sore spot. I feel like a gossip rag. Next up, pictures of Cyclops taken from a bush outside his house. You'll never guess what secret X-Force mission he just greenlit. Number 2, Hal Jordan and Arisia. This one is infamous now, and in continuity we really try not to talk about this. Okay. Hal Jordan and Arisia. Very early in Hal Jordan's continuity, there was a bit of a no alien chicks thing, so he wasn't paired too much with the rest of the Corps. Not to mention the Corps took a while to coalesce. It used to just be Hal chilling in space, being sent from place to place by the Guardians. Once there was a Corps, one of the members was Arisia, a character who was clearly on the younger side, who had a crush on Hal, and at first it was well handled. Hal knew about it, but would always let her down easy and let her know that she was more like a sister to him, even frequently calling her little sister. Until eventually he had to put her down hard when she showed up in Green Lantern 204 in a new revealing costume to entice him. He finally told her, look, no, you're half my age, you have to stop flirting with me. Well, one day, the same writer who brought us Colossus and barely legal Kitty Pryde decided that Hal and Arisia were going to be trapped in a cave. And suddenly, Arisia is older. She used her power ring to will her body to be older. And the comic will claim that this also went for her mind, but I say to that, sure Jan. She was 14 by the way. So yeah. And well, all of a sudden, all of his rationale went out the window. Woman body, cave, making out. They would fully get together after this, and there's one issue where Guy Gardner spikes their drinks so that they can get together. This whole plot. Later, a new writer, Peter David, well, a couple of writers later, would just have her break it off with him. And so it was never mentioned again, except by people like me. I refuse to let this hot mess go. It must live on and the world must know. And what could beat that? Number 1, the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. That's right, twin siblings, twincest, from the 1610 Ultimate Verse. And yes, they knew they were siblings. And yes, people in that universe will judge Cap for not getting it. What a stick in the mud. So why did this happen? Well, the Ultimate Verse was edgy and extreme, pushing boundaries, many of which nobody was asking to be pushed. Now, fans did not react well to this, but the writers kept pushing it, adding more backstory when it was at first more subtle, like them sleeping together and Wolverine, who is potentially thought to be their father for a bit, watching them from the bushes. So why was all this happening? Well, mostly it was build up to kill off Wanda so that people in universe would care, and it could be part of motivation for launching Ultimatum, an event so awful and edgy that it is said to have been the death knell for the entire Ultimate Universe. That's why Ultimates 3, Ultimatum, the whole thing. No, bad Marvel, bad.